Chapter 7, Reconnaissance with the 9th Infantry, subtitle 9th Recon Troop. The primary function of a fast and maneuverable reconnaissance unit as part of an infantry or armored division in World War II was to scout and survey or reconnoiter the enemy's position, strength, movement, type of organization, whether infantry, artillery, armor, etc., and to identify the organization's name. The information that was obtained most often proved vital for our military intelligence personnel in making effective strategic and tactical decisions, and to guard against surprises by the German military. The 9th Reconnaissance Cavalry Troop, a small unit of 155 men and a part of the 9th Infantry Division, served as the eyes and ears and sometimes the nose of the division. Timely reaction was essential in getting any new information back to headquarters, either by radio or carrier. The data could be relayed as high up as the Allied Supreme Commander, General Dwight Eisenhower, for all we knew. If we weren't regularly sending significant information back to our command post and or Army intelligence, we weren't doing our assignment. This often involved a fierce engagement with German forces to accomplish our mission. Our patrols were conducted on foot when operating in heavily wooded and mountainous terrain, but the M6 six-wheeled armored car and four-wheel drive jeeps were the ideal vehicles for rapid advance when a breakthrough occurred and there was need for great firepower. The hedgerow countryside also was, in French, was called the bocage of Normandy, made difficult warfare conditions for the armored cars and tanks, whereas the open and flatter country terrain was better suited for mechanized mobile units rushing eastward toward the Rhineland and beyond. At times, our vehicles were left behind in motor pool areas where the troop conducted extended foot patrols or when we were at outposts requiring a minimum profile. While our vehicles were sitting idle in the rear echelon area, the ordnance group would perform maintenance and repairs, thoroughly checking and even overhauling engines, transmissions, and braking and cooling systems when necessary. This period was also used to replenish the ammo supply, 37 millimeter cannon, 50 caliber, and 30 caliber machine gun rounds, and check out the condition of our radios. It was extremely important that our vehicles were always restored to the best condition possible to withstand the heavy demands and the severe wear and tear. When driven on a paved highway or even on a well-kept dirt road, the M8 armored car was notably smooth riding and silent. We never experienced a mechanical failure with the gasoline engine powered vehicles that we manned. Although Robert, our regular driver, often complained when the men piled bedrolls and other items on the rear deck above the engine. He was always concerned about overheating the engine and the crippling results that would have caused. We put up with his frequent disgruntled warnings in his deep, loud voice, even though not fully appreciated the importance of his sensible precaution at the moment. Much more can be said about the remarkable Ford Motor Company M8 light armored car, sometimes referred to as the Greyhound armored car, even though it seldom had been referred to in accounts of military history. The purpose of its design primarily was to serve as a basic communication combat vehicle of the U.S. cavalry reconnaissance troops and was first placed in actual warfare conditions in 1943. Its speed and agility was well suited for the intended missions, in spite of the later discovery that the car lacked firepower and adequate armor plate. The ability to travel up to 55 miles per hour on well-graded roads helped to keep the German forces off balance and enabled recon cavalry to relentlessly maintain some form of contact with the enemy. It was the duty of the car's radio man, when required, to keep in touch with any other units involved in the surrounding sectors. A maneuver that fell upon the cavalry was the task of also a task of delaying or rear action. Delayed action or rear action. When major elements had to withdraw, when our elements had to withdraw, that they had to have somebody to hold them off, delay the enemy while they were withdrawing. Along with the relatively thin armor of our vehicles, this action caused other army outfits, to think of cavalrymen as those guys having to perform suicide missions. Performing the function of command liaison often meant relaying by radio to the higher chain of command and information received from subordinate elements. The armored car's maneuverability quickened the response in forwarding vital facts to the rear echelon. Its 6 rubber-tired wheels were powered by a Hercules JXD inline 110 horsepower, 6-cylinder, 320 cubic inch gasoline engine. The car was geared to propel the 16,400 pounds of steel, munitions, and assorted equipment and a crew of 4 from a range of 100 to 350 miles, depending on the terrain, without refueling. The 37 millimeter pea shooter was only effective up to about 400 yards against light vehicles and infantry. Assignments would vary, many of them at night, from merely observing frontline positions of the German soldiers to engaging in firefights to determine their strength, number of personnel and type of armament, or to attempt the taking of prisoners for interrogation. Slipping behind the German positions was accomplished successfully on several occasions. But our job description was altered more than a few times. There again, no labor union to negotiate for us. When our unit was positioned alongside the non-armored infantry with our greatly respected GI grunts in battle against the German forces, I always will remember with ardor those magnanimous men. Magnanimous. Well, I wrote it, but I can't say it. Understandably, we of the recon group at times were looked upon somewhat with disdain by the slogging, pitifully fatigued foot soldiers as our vehicles came alongside their long lines heading to the battlefront, or they're moving to another sector to attack or to hold the line for days and nights. We too, most likely, were about to run up against a wall of fierce resistance, the prospect drawing little sympathy from them, since we were more privileged, being motorized most of the time, or part of the time, while they carried all their possessions on their backs. And we realized that they would be spending long periods without relief from the bitter cold winter of 1944-45, as well as the constant threat of the enemy and the overbearing thought, how can we possibly get through this alive? So we held no bad feelings, of course, since their seemingly resentful demeanor towards us during those occasions was understood. Those frequently isolated soldiers generally did not realize that we suffered similar ordeals, except for the one luxury of being able, now and then, to warm our hands and feet on the engines of our armored cars and jeeps when we were in limited possession of these vehicles. Oddly, this remarkable machine, in my opinion, received little recognition in wartime writings. It proved to be the ideal vehicle for the mechanized cavalry recon units in Europe, in spite of its light armor plate and lack of a larger cannon.